we're going to be having a look at both systems. I want to show you some of the interesting parts from both systems. First of all, I want to give you a general look and feel, a bit of a flavour of Sage 200 standard, okay, which is what we're looking at now. But one of the things I want to show you first is the Sage 200 roadmap. So if I select this hyperlink here, so this is the Sage 200 standard client that I've got open, and this is my home page. Okay, it doesn't mean this has to be our home page, because when we go through training during an implementation, during a project, we'll do things like set a different, more useful home page potentially. But for example, up here we have the roadmap. So I'm showing you this because Sage 200 has a very healthy roadmap. Okay, Sage have been investing lots and lots of money and lots of resource into developing Sage 200 suite, not just Sage 200 standard or professional, but the whole range of versions of products. So this split is split between what's just been delivered, and bearing in mind the Sage 200 standard version is constantly being updated. Okay, so it's not a manual process to upgrade it. It's automatically being updated throughout the year for new features. And the professional version has a lifespan of many years, but that's a different process to update it. But the point is, this shows us what's been delivered recently, what's on the roadmap to be delivered in the next version or next immediate version, and what's currently in development for future versions. So the point is, it's got a very healthy roadmap. Okay. Next, I want to show you just navigating around the system. Okay, if you are currently using Sage 50, you'll probably recognize the look and feel. It's quite similar, and that's intentional because it's the next logical upgrade path from Sage 50. But navigating around the system, it made it really straightforward and intuitive. So on the left-hand side, I've got a list of all of the items that I've got access to. Okay, it doesn't mean that I'll have access to everything. So for example, if I'm a new starter and I'm just working in credit control, then I might not even have any concept of a nominal account. So, I'll only have access to the specific areas that I need access to, and we help manage that access rights. If I'm trying to find something on my menu over the left-hand side, I can do a quick search. For example, if it's the name of a report or name of a transaction or something similar, then as long as it's contained within what I've searched for, then I can see it in the menu, and then I can right-click on the item, select Show in my menu, and that'll take me to where it is within the menu. In this example, it's within Nominal and Enter Transactions. And then from here, I can right-click and select Add to Favorites, or I can actually click on the item, and that'll open up the form for me. Okay. And once we've got the form open, we've got a few markers at the top right-hand corner. This is the same for every form in the system. So the first item is somewhere where we can provide feedback direct to Sage. And we have seen feedback being provided to R&D or research and development at Sage, and these become features or different ways of working, which is really good. The next item is a star, so this just means it's been added to my favorites. And then the next one is a question mark. So this gives us some assistance over here as to what we're seeing, how we can use it, and in this example, how to actually enter an accrual in the nominal ledger. And if we need more help, then we've got even more items down here, so hyperlinked. And this will take us to that specific form within the company, so we can really get the most out of how we're using the company. Okay. It works off of list views and workspaces, so different ways of viewing our data. So for example, if I want to go to my sales ledger, then I can click on customers and then select customer list. And then very quickly it'll take me to my sales ledger where I'm managing all of my customers. And similarly, if I want to go to my nominal ledger, then I can just click on my nominal list, and that'll take me to my nominal list. So these are list views, and they're quite functional. Okay, most systems have these have list views, and we can create filters on these really quickly. So if I wanted to focus, for example, right now I want to focus on all of my customers with a balance above, let's say, 3K, for whatever reason, I can make this public filter public so that everybody else can use this filter now. But all I'm doing is choosing, well, what do I want to be able to filter on quickly? So in this example, it's going to be customers with a balance where is greater than 3,000. I can save that filter, and then that filter will always be there for me. Unless I delete it, it'll always be there for me and the people I've shared it with. So I can quickly hone in on this example, customers with a balance above a certain amount. But it could be anything, as long as the information is held within in the list view in the columns, then we can filter on it. Okay, when it becomes even more functional when we go over to the commercial areas. So for example, if I now go to my sales order list, I can see a list of all of my sales orders, whether they're complete or whether they're still live. But then we have quite a lot of control on the filters because we have these columns here. So whether it's ready to allocate the goods, whether it's allocated, whether it's ready for dispatch, whether it's dispatched, and whether it's ready for invoice and whether it's invoiced, and it's a part or full for those as well. So we can filter on those, and it's quite functional. Okay. I want to show you the one of the areas where we spend quite a lot of time, okay, and still on the financials, is the transaction inquiry. So the transaction inquiry is where we go to have a look at our transactions that are on account, and also any other information, lots of other information around the transactions. Okay, so the way that we get to it is by double clicking onto a customer or a supplier. Okay, so let's open up our transaction inquiry form. And then from here, we can see currently everything that's on account, or we can untick this button and this will show us everything, all transactions from the start of time. So who posted them, the values, and how much payment or receipt has been allocated, whether they're in query. And then what we can do is use this drill down here, which is really functional because this will show us things like, well, what were the nominal postings associated with that particular transaction? Or what were the VAT elements or the bank elements, or are there any memos in that particular transaction? But actually Sage has made it really easy for us to do things like make corrections if we've made a mistake. Sage is very forgiving if we made a mistake, but we don't just purge or delete things from the system, because obviously the audit trail has to have integrity. And so, for example, let's just say we raise a simple invoice on here, okay, for 100, for example. Okay. So I'm just going to post that. So that's posted it. It's got it onto our debtor account. And then from our transaction inquiry, so if I double click back onto this customer account, okay, so I can see the invoice that's been posted and when it was posted. And down here, we've got this correct button. Okay, now how we use this depends on, for example, whether this is an invoice in the back of a sales order. Obviously, we want it to still interact with stock, so we might want to consider doing something with doing a return or something similar. But down here, we've got three different buttons. We've got a reversal, which will create a credit note with all the same values and nominals and references and same date and allocate it against each other. So it's akin to deleting it, but it's actually a reversal. And then we've got general correction, so we can make any type of correction that we need to. And then we've also got allocations. So if there's a receipt that's been allocated to it, then we can unallocate it. But if I was just to do a general reversal, okay, so it's picked up the same nominals, the same references, same VAT. Okay, so that's as if I've just deleted it. Okay, you'll see that it just removes itself from our transaction inquiry. But actually, if we show the full history, we can see that they do exist still, but they've just been allocated up against each other. And then really importantly, it's all in the audit trail. So any of these corrections or reversals that we make, they're all within our transaction inquiry list. Okay, so for example, if I go into nominal inquiries and then transaction audit trail, okay, so we can see here, let's do a quick refresh. So I can see the nominal postings associated with the invoice that I made, and then the correction that automatically happened, the credit note that was allocated to the invoice. So all of these corrections and changes that we make, it all has the audit trail and the nominal list. Okay. And if we go to the nominal, so one of the things that makes Sage 200 really powerful is it has 3 dimensions within the nominal ledger. So we've got our account code, which is up to 8 characters, which makes it, we can have a very large range of accounts. And it also has a concept of these 2 dimensions, a cost center and department. So they're typically used for profit and loss accounts. So if we want to isolate a certain area of the business, whether it's a physical location like a depot and how much revenue or cost is happening in that area, or if it's just a department within our company, if we want to see how is that department performing, how much is it costing us. So during an implementation, we go through your financial chart of accounts requirements. We'll make recommendations as to, will departments and/or cost centers be useful to us, and how can we design that so that when we're running our P&L, okay, so within nominal reports, financial statements, when we do go to run our profit and loss, how do we want to run that? Do we want to isolate a certain part of the business and see how that's performing, see how much it's costing, or see what the revenue is? And we can use these 2 filters in conjunction with each other. So we can say, well, how about this particular cost center? But how about that particular cost center for these departments? So these different departments. So we can really run these in conjunction in the dimensions to get to our financial position. But if we leave them all blank, then it will just include all of our cost centers and all of our departments to get us to that P&L financial position. Okay. There's different ways of viewing our data. So right now we're looking at a list view. There's also workspaces. Okay, now when I say workspaces, I mean areas that are tailored to a duty, to something that we're trying to achieve quite specifically. Okay, so for example, if I'm on customer, taking customer for an example, if I'm working in credit control, I've got access to everything I need. I can double click like we did previously to get to the transaction inquiry. We've got our reports, our credit control reports, fairly standard. We can look at our due date and our age debtors to see the age of the debt and what's owed. But it stands to reason, without needing to go to transaction inquiry for different accounts and running reports to get to our position, to see how we're performing and to perform credit control, there's a workspace designed specifically for that, and that's the same for quite a few areas in the system. So, for example, on the customer side, we've got our within credit control, we've got our credit control inquiry here. You can see that they're a workspace because they've got a sort of a globe symbol. Okay, and this is all standard so far that we're seeing. This is the same for Sage 200 standard and for professional. This is just the standard functionality and features for Sage 200. But if you notice on this workspace, so we've got a list at the top, but we've got search features on each of the columns rather than just one global search like we have on a normal list view. But on this, we can actually search the particular columns to find something specific. These also interact with each other. So these panes of information, they all interact with each other. Okay. Now, when I say they interact, if we select one of our customers from this top pane, and that will update the other two panes of information. And similarly, if we select the transaction that's on account for that particular customer from the bottom pane, then again, it'll update our transaction detail, our pane on the right-hand side. Okay, but because we're working in credit control in this example for this workspace, the columns of information that have been added as standard are relevant to credit control, such as the balance, credit limit, date of last transaction, average time to pay, payment terms in days, and whether they're on hold or not. And then again, from the right-hand side, we can use this to have a look at things like turnover by year to see the type of account that we're liaising with. But again, from here, we can right-click and we can perform actions such as entering transactions and making corrections and exporting data. So it's really flexible. So first, we had a look at a list view, and these are workspaces. We've also got summaries in the system. And again, it's all just viewing data, but in a different way, in a different perspective. So when I say summaries, on the top up here, we've got a summary section. And then from here, we've got a set of 6 summaries for different areas of the system. So if I click on the sales summary, so this just shows us for the current financial year, our periodic turnover, okay, actual versus trend. And then if we've got the history in our company, then we've also got last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, just so we can have a quick snapshot of how we're doing our turnover. And then further down, we've got things like our outstanding debt. So this is a summary of all of our debtors. Obviously, 117k overdue. This is a demo company that's about a year old, but this just shows us, well, of the 117k that's outstanding for our debtors, if we click into this, and it'll actually drill further into this, so it shows us the ratio of who our largest debtors are. Okay, and if we click on one of those slices of the pie, that will then bring up the actual specific transactions that make up that debtor balance, that debt for that particular customer account. So this can be really used in a credit control way, but also just to see how we're performing. And we've got things like top 10 customers, worst paying customers, and then the percentage of customers that are responsible for 80% of sales. And again, we can drill into these further to get to the information, and then pull up the actual workspace, the list of transactions that make up that slice. So we don't have time to go through all of these, but these are quite functional. If we just need a top level view of how we're performing. And we can also access this and reports and workspaces via a web browser. So right now, this is a physical client that's installed on a machine. It's only a small installer for the actual app, and that's the same for professional and standard. In standard, it will connect to the data that's in the cloud. But on here, if I click on a tool symbol and then select Show Workspaces in Browser, this will connect to the data anywhere in the world, provided I've got obviously a stable internet connection. So I can choose my company. And now I'm accessing, if I just zoom in slightly so you can see just a bit clearer. So now you can see we're accessing in a view-only context. We're accessing the data via a web browser. So I can have a look at the summaries. So this is the summary that we just had a look at, but now in the context of a web browser, asking a different way. We can also run reports. So if we wanted to run run our P&L. And again, you'd only have access if you only wanted somebody to have access to a set of reports, or maybe it's somebody working in the warehouse that needs access to a workspace just so they can see those goods being received, or have a look at orders outstanding or goods received not invoiced, things like this. Then they can have access just to a specific stock control workspace. But these are tailored to specific areas. And similarly for reports, if we only want them to have access just to a very specific set of reports, then we can give them access via a web browser. And these web users, you get 2 web users that come as standard with Sage 200, with Sage 200 standard, but then additional web user licenses are relatively inexpensive. Okay. And also, just another way of viewing the data, Sage have been putting a lot of resource into replicating everything that Sage 200 does, but via a web portal. Okay, so this is another way of accessing our Sage 200 data. Okay, so this is now looking at, again, looking into the specific company. This is still currently under development, but it's becoming more popular. Okay, so from here, for example, I can go to my supplier list, and again, I can access this anywhere where I've got a internet connection. Okay, and from here, I can enter transactions, I can make corrections, do what I need to do on my day-to-day basis. Okay. I want to veer over to stock control, a bit more to the commercial sections now. Sage 200 does what it does incredibly well with its financials, and all of the stock and order processing modules are all held within Sage 200. So with Sage 200 standard, we get these modules, the commercial modules that come when we purchase or subscribe to Sage 200. Whereas with Sage 200 Professional, we can actually just subscribe to financials if we're not using. So, for example, if we really needed Sage 200 for nominal accounts for cost centers and departments, then that's fantastic. But if we don't manage stock and we just need financials, but we do need business intelligence, and and there might be some add-ons that we need as well, then Professional would likely be the best option for us. Okay, I'm going to have a look at an item on here. Okay, so for example, let's have a look at board 001 and just amend the details so we can see what information we hold against the product. Okay, so we've got a unique item code and our name. It works off of product groups. Again, there's different reasons why we separate items into different product groups. One product group might be just for service and labor items, for things like training, consultancy. Another product group might just hold items that are non-stock, miscellaneous, ancillaries. Another product group might be for one certain product, one certain sort of actual stock item that we're buying and selling. Okay, so we help you during scoping go through how to logically split them. But we hold lots of defaults on the product group level. So as soon as we enter a new product, one of the first things it will ask us is, well, what product group does this belong to? And then as soon as we choose a product group, then lots of those defaults will cascade down to the item level to save us time. So this particular item is a stock item, so we are looking at the history of it. Okay, and we also have each stocking unit, so it does have a concept of units of measure. So for example, we might be buying in pallets or boxes and selling in singular items. And then we also have, do we want this to be allowed for sales order and invoicing? The costing method is FIFO. So there's a few different costing methods. We've got FIFO, which is first in, first out, which tends to be the most popular. There's also standard, where we just define a static value and it won't change unless we change it, or average, where it'll have a look at the cost price of a stock as being the average. On the professional version, it also has actual costing method. Now we can only have an actual costing method if we have batch and serial traceability. So any of those traceable items, so things that we're, for example, manufacturing, things we're producing, we need to see where the components have come from to produce that item. And then once it's been manufactured, it'll have its own serial number or batch number for the batch of items. And so that will have an actual cost price. And that's the cost price that will be posted to the nominal ledger, cost of sales posting when we're selling the stock, if we have it integrated. Next, we've got some analysis codes. Now, analysis codes are a really good functional way of analysing our data. So it's ways of grouping things together, and they're recyclable as well. But there could be a drop-down list, things like if it's on the sales ledger, things like account manager. And then when we're reporting, we can hone in on how one account manager is performing versus another. Or it could be other ways of grouping things together, like region. And then we've got down here our default nominals and then legislative information. So if we need to, if we're importing or exporting and getting items through customs, then we'll need a commercial invoice, and that will contain things like the commodity code, country of origin, and weight. There's no limit to the number of suppliers that we record or hold against a product. There'll only ever be one preferred. And this comes into play when we do things like a back-to-back. So if we want a direct to customer back-to-back, then we can have when we generate the purchase order on the back of the sales order, it'll choose the preferred supplier. If I go into one of these suppliers, so you can see this information. So we've got the supplier stock code, the lead time, and this comes into play when we're generating a list of suggested purchase orders, so that we, if we hit a reorder level on certain stock locations, and also to fulfill back-to-back orders, then this can come into play as to what orders to actually suggest that we raise based on the lead time, days, weeks, months or years, and also usual and minimum order quantity. In terms of supplier prices, we've got list price or last buying price. So if we're regularly receiving lists from our suppliers of updated prices, then we can import those via CSV. Otherwise, if we want Sage to remember what the last PO price was at any given time, then we can set it to last buying price. And then when we raise a purchase order for an item for this supplier, then it'll remember what that price is and recall it for us. And then we've also got alternatives and cross-selling, which we'll have a look at. So alternatives can be an item that if we don't have any of this particular item in stock, then we can add an alternative. So for example, if they're on the phone, if they're making an inquiry, then we can see we haven't got it in stock, but we can see what the alternative is. And then cross-selling. So this is for things where we've got something similar to what we're selling, something that goes well with it. Okay, so something that we want to sell along with this item that we're selling, and we can call upon this on our when we're raising a sales order. One of the reasons people choose Sage 200 over Sage 50 is multi-location. So Sage 200 is a multi-location system for stock, which makes it a lot more powerful than Sage 50 and other systems. So right here, I've got an item, and I've got these two locations, one called home, one called warehouse. And then we've got, on each of these locations, we've got a reorder, minimum, maximum, and quantity in stock. And then down here, we've got a second tier location. So these can be shelves or aisles in a warehouse, and we can set an order priority to these. So when we're allocating stock, if there's contention between two different sales orders, we've only got one in stock, and we're trying to allocate to multiple orders, then it can have a look at, well, that's for if it's if there's a customer that has a higher priority, and if there's a location that has a higher priority, it'll allocate from that stock first, and to the customer that's a higher priority first. So that's when we're auto allocating. But we can add extra locations here. So I can have any number of locations set up in the system, and I can choose which of the locations that I've set up do I actually want to associate with this particular item. Okay. Yeah, we also have attachments. So in line with going paperless, there's quite a few different areas in the system where we can attach documents, whether it's sales invoices, purchase invoices, stock items, accounts. So we can have any number of items to attach there. We can also set memos and comments against these. So do we want a default comment to appear on a pick list, or a default comment to appear on a dispatch note, something like a handle with care or something similar? And then finally, down at the bottom, we've got selling prices. It works off of price bands. Okay, so we have on here, I've just got a small handful of price bands with different selling prices. You can have an unlimited number of price bands, and then we link those customers to different price bands. Okay, so just to make sure that people get the price that we're assigning to them. When we're raising a sales order, which we'll have a look at, we can also check, well, what's the margin going to be, or a quotation or a price inquiry. So what would the margin be for this particular customer for this quantity? Okay. Before even getting to the point of producing a formal quotation or an order, we do have this price inquiry up here. So if we wanted to give someone, for example, a verbal quotation, so if they're on the phone, and before going through the process of creating a formal quotation, we can do a quick price inquiry. So first I select the customer, and then I can choose the item code, and then a quantity. So if this customer was to buy 5 of these, and bearing in mind it's taking into account the price band that this customer is linked to, And also in the price book, it's looking at things like whether there's any quantity discounts. So for example, a 5% discount if they buy 5, a 10% discount if they buy 15. And also it takes into account any other rulings in terms of the selling price discounts. And so if we were to raise a sales order for this amount for this customer, then this would be the total discount and this would be the total discounted price. Okay. If I go over to our sales order, just so you can see this part. Okay. So if I was to go from here, I can raise quotes, I can raise pro formas, I can convert those quotes and pro formas into orders. If I just go into raise a full order, okay, I'll choose our customer. If the customer's on hold or at risk of being over the credit limit, then messages will appear on here. We can also set alerts in the system, just standard alerts for certain customers to say, for example, pro forma only, or this person's a friend of the boss or something similar. This is all fairly standard. So we've got our order status, document date, requested and promised dates, and the customer might have given us a PO at this stage. But as I'm adding my items, okay, so these are the 4 types of items we can add to a sales or purchase order. So standard items are things we're holding in stock, or service labor items or miscellaneous that we've got on our stock list. Free text items are things we're not tracking the history of, additional charges and comment lines. So let's do a quick search on here. So I can see as I'm typing in and as it's dwindling down the list, I can see how much free stock we've currently got of each of the items. So I'm going to choose my board 001. And I can choose where I'm going to dispatch this from. And again, I can see on each of our locations, how much have we got in stock in each of these particular locations. And then I can choose to issue from that particular location. I choose a quantity. So this will pull through the selling price for this customer for this item based on the quantity. Before committing to actually saving this item, I can select on the click on the profit button, and this will show us, well, what is the estimated profit that we'll be making based on the cost price, just to make sure that we're actually making a healthy margin before committing to saving. If I select save and cross-sell, that'll open up a form that will show me things that go well with this item, like we were looking at previously. And down here, I've also got a suggested items button. So from here, and again, we might currently have them on the phone, and we might be saying, you know, we're aware that you bought a handful of these items, you know, a few weeks ago, and also that you bought one of these items last month. And we can also see items that we've marked in the system as being a preferred item for this customer. With all of these items, all these criteria, it will show us things that could potentially be useful for us to mention to them whilst we've got them on the phone or via email, for example. And then from here on the fly, we can add those items onto the order, and then choose our quantity as well. Okay. And if this is a back-to-back order, I can select save and generate PO, and that will generate the purchase order, or I can select save, and that'll produce our sales order, and then we can progress to complete that sales order, invoice it, and get it onto our debtor control. Okay. So all of this that I've shown you so far is normal functionality that you get with both Sage 200 Standard and with Sage 200 Professional. But then as we get into the more complex or more functional items, then we start veering over to Sage 200 Professional. I just want to show you one more thing on here, is the period control. Okay, so we're counting periods. So it has a concept of source modules for accounting periods. Okay, so I've got 12 accounting periods in this financial year, and I've got my end date for each of my periods. But you'll see on here I've got 5 source modules: sales, purchase, cash book, stock, and nominal adjustments. We can have everything open for the whole year, and it'll be akin to open accounting like Sage 50, or what larger companies tend to need to do is close down our months periodically. So for example, in around February or March time, we'll be closing off our January sales and purchases and cash book and stock, and then we might leave the nominal adjustments open just in case we need to make any journals before fully closing off that period. But that means that once it's been closed off, when we run our profit and loss for that particular period, regardless of when people are entering transactions, it's going to be static. We're not going to see fluctuations. The nominal elements will go to the next available open period, but the transaction can still be dated in a closed period, but the nominal postings will go to the next available open period, so we don't see those fluctuations. Okay. If I just open up our professional, okay, so this is now Sage 200 Professional that we're looking at. So you'll already notice it looks very similar, albeit the left-hand menu is a bit different. Things are located in different areas. But like I say, with Sage 200 Professional, this is open to other modules such as bill of materials, project accounting, and manufacturing, and also lots of third-party add-ons in the marketplace. Down here, there is actually a Sage Editions hyperlink. Okay, so this will show us a lot of the add-ons for Sage 200, the popular add-ons such as Sim 200 manufacturing and manufacturing suite, spindle document management for going paperless. Within Sage 200 Professional, so one of the things I wanted to show you is within our stock control. So you'll notice there's more items within our stock control. And if I just bring in an extra column on here, let's have a look at traceable and traceable type name, choose a traceable item. So this is now looking at a traceable product. Okay. The difference on here you'll see is we've got this batch and serial numbers tab. So from here, whether we're manufacturing or simply buying and selling, but we need to trace that item. When I say trace it, I mean find out exactly where it came from and where it went to on those orders for that specific item. So we've got batch numbers, or we could use serial numbers. We can have them automatically generated, or we can enter the serial numbers ourselves. With Sage 200 Professional, it integrates with barcoding and warehousing applications. So if we're scanning items into the warehouse, doing stock takes, stock additions, stock write-offs, and then issuing stock out of the warehouse, we can use our scanning devices, and that'll work in conjunction with our batch and serial numbers with barcodes. Okay, we've also got an extra 2 nominals down here. So on Sage 200 Standard, we had just our stock or purchases and our revenue for sales. But on here, we've also got accrued receipts. So if we want to accrue for goods received, not invoiced. And we've also got an issues nominal. So that will post to our cost of sales, our issues. So as we're selling stock, it'll automatically post the cost of sales value. Okay. Just going to close out of this. Finally, I want to show you a reporting tool that comes with Professional, but doesn't come with Standard. It's quite a popular reporting tool called Business Intelligence for Sage 200. Now, in the menu, we've got about 80 reports. So a lot of our sites like to use Business Intelligence for their management accounts. So they'll do their profit and loss and their balance sheet, trial balance, all of this in Excel via Business Intelligence. And also our commercial reports we can see and run. But actually, it's been developed as a straightforward to use reporting tool. If I just show you how straightforward it is to create a report, we have training manuals on these, and we provide assistance, and we build the reports for sites as well. But from here, you'll see there's a Sage BI tab just at the top. What this gives you, it gives you a portal into your Sage 200 data. And again, this is just for Professional, it doesn't come with Standard. If I select new reports on here, this is now connecting to our Sage 200 data. So it works off of analysis cubes. So it pivots our 16 cubes of data of our Sage 200 data, and then allows us to plug into that data via this tool. So one of the cubes is called SOP invoice credits, and this is all of our invoices and credit notes that have been posted to the sales ledger on the back of sales orders. So this is all about our products that we're selling and customer performance and margins. And if I just call this one top 10 customers, just so I can show you how quickly we can create a basic report. I'm going to zoom in just so you can see, in this case it's a bit small on the screen. Okay, so it doesn't look like much at the minute. It just is our title at the top, and then some filters that we've got at the top, and then just a very basic table with 1 row and 1 column. Okay, but this is where we then go into this report layout tool, where we can effectively pivot our data. Okay, so if I just explain what we're seeing on here. So in the top left-hand corner, we've got a column section. So this is just showing us what's going to be in our columns. And then the one further one down, we have our rows. So this is going to be what do we want to appear in our rows. Right now that's set to Customer Account Manager, which I know is one of the analysis codes somebody's used for Account Manager. That could be used for many other things. And then in the bottom pane, we've also got our slices or filters or areas of data. Now, because I'm connecting right now to our sales cube, it's showing me information about our customer, about the products that we're selling or product groups, around sales order dates, transaction dates, and stock location. Okay, so whereas if I connected to our finance cube, then it's going to show me things around our nominal accounts and our cost centers and departments and our, our profit and loss and balance sheet structures. So it's very different what it shows us depending on what we're connected to. For the purpose of this, I just want to see our top 10 customers. So it's a drag and drop tool, similar to a pivot table in Excel, a standard pivot table. This is why the Sage have developed it to make it user-friendly, so that after a bit of training, you can start to produce and maintain your own reports. So I want my customer name to be my rows, so it's going to set rule to output everything. And in my column, I'm happy to have just the one column, which is going to be our value. And what do we want to see? Do we want to see the profit that we've realized for everything we sold to that customer, or do we want to sell? What I want to see is goods value in our base currency. Okay, and then select apply. So that gives us the data, and then we want to filter that data to say, well, I only want to include our top 10 customers based on goods value in base currency. For this example, I can create multiple filters. So that gets me my data, and then we can do what Excel does well. Then we can start inserting charts, so recommended charts, or choose our own charts. But you'd understand that after just a bit of training, you can start to create some really functional dashboards, and you can have multiple Excel reports as well within, I should say, BI reports within one Excel workbook. So that's just showing us our top 10 customers. But if I wanted to see now, let's create a new report down here. I'll connect to the same cube, and I'll call this one product sales. And then from here, so again, I can go into my tool, but this time rather than customer being in the rows, I actually want it to be our products. So I can have a look at our item code, the code of what we've been selling. And maybe in our columns, I want to see the order dates. So in our columns, I might want to see, well, do I want to see everything from the start of time, or just want to see 2020, or quarterly, monthly, or daily? If I just want to have a look at quarterly sales for 2020 in my columns, and again, make sure it's my goods value in our base currency, so it's not summing up base and foreign exchange. Okay, so that now shows us the sales, quarterly sales for our products and how they've been doing, and then I can add filters up to the top as well. Maybe I want to have a look at, fine, that's quarterly sales, but what about quarterly sales for that particular account manager or those account managers? So I can filter by highlighting those items, and it applies the filter. So it becomes quite a good functional tool for getting to the data I need to. And finally, because this is a plug to the data, one of the things that we'll probably want to do if we're starting to use a new reporting tool, we're going to want to reconcile this with what we've been using previously. And if there's a difference, we want to know why there's a difference. And so this gives us the ability here to actually drill into the data. So for example, that 19K for Q2 2020, and for that particular item, if we wanted to know what makes up that 19,000, we can right click, bearing in mind that's been filtered and pivoted and it takes lots of things into account. But if I want to find out the actual transactions that make up that 19K, we can right click and then select drill to detail, choose where we're going to export those transactions to, and it'll bring out those sales order invoices. So we can see, well, what were the orders, where was it dispatched from, what was the customer name, and then what was the goods value in the currency, in our base currency, and also our tax value in currency and base. Okay. And we see the quantity that was sold, and also the margin that we made on those items that we sold. It becomes quite a good functional tool, not just for reporting, but for investigating as well.